Thank you, Denise. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce to you Victoria Nahum. Victoria is the co-founder and executive director of the Safe Care Campaign. Through her personal journey, Victoria has become a very compelling and articulate advocate for safer health care. She has put a very human face on the statistics we hear about every day, and we're honored to have her here today to share her story. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Someone once said that in life, perhaps even more than education, experience is sometimes the best teacher. Well, if that is true, I can tell you with all certainty that there is no one in America that I know of today who has been taught more or who has been more profoundly affected by the personal devastation and particular loss caused by healthcare-acquired infections than my own family. I grabbed these pictures you see here randomly from our photo album because I not only wanted you to see what a handsome bunch we all are, but I wanted you to know that my family is just like your family in a lot of normal ways. Similar, yes, but different, as well as in 1 year ago, 3 of us, representing 3 generations of Nahums, in 3 different hospitals, in 3 different states, in a total time span of just 10 months, had each acquired our own unique infection while receiving medical care. 3 different procedures in 3 different hospitals in 3 different states. Our son Josh actually died of his infection, permanently damaging his spinal cord, debilitating, suffocating, and finally paralyzing him prior to his death. Before it was all over, Josh would endure not 1, not 2, but 3 different infections, and none of them being the original reason that he was hospitalized. What I've learned during that time and ever since is the reason I have become and I remain a woman on fire with one sole purpose: to help end these largely avoidable infections. What I've learned through my journey thus far is what I've been invited to share with all of you who have gathered with us today. There exists a concept called the theory of sensitive dependence on initial condition. You may have heard of it by another name. It's also known as the butterfly effect. It asks the question, does the flap of a butterfly's wing in Brazil set off a tornado in Texas? It says, change one thing, change everything. It sounds complicated, I know, but really it isn't. Basically, it's the snowball that triggers the avalanche. It insists that everything in the equation, no matter how small, matters in a big way in the end. And the reason I reference it here today is because it's all about cause and effect, as are many healthcare-acquired infections. In everyday life, the theory of sensitive dependence on initial condition, hence, leave your driveway this morning, take a left instead of a right, and you may have provoked or prevented something life-changing in some small or some big way. Sometimes we get to know the consequences of our choices and actions. Sometimes we don't. And still, it's change one thing, change everything. In science, it demonstrates its capacity for dramatic change through a condition known as Down syndrome, where one single extra chromosome actually causes the condition itself. Yet without the presence of that one extra chromosome, Down's does not exist. Change one thing, change everything. The theory maintains that actions and choices, both large and small, have the potential to change circumstances in amazing, unexpected ways. In the 1920s, American novelist Anne Parrish and her husband were browsing old bookstores in Paris, and they thought to enter a certain antique bookstore on one street, but a broken water main had prevented their passage, so her husband spotted another store and pointed them in that direction, and they decided to go into that store instead. And so as they entered, they started to browse through the used books, And all of a sudden, Anne came upon one book entitled Jack Frost and Other Stories. Well, reverently, she picked up the old book and she happily showed it to her husband, thumbing through the pages, talking about how this particular book had been a childhood favorite of hers. And taking the book from her, her husband opened it up, and there on the flyleaf was the written inscription, Anne Parrish, 209 North Weber Street, Colorado Springs. It was Anne's very own book. Change one thing, change everything, you decide. On Labor Day weekend 2006, our 27-year-old son, Josh, broke his femur and fractured his skull. And after recovering for 5 weeks in a Colorado ICU, he had finally been released to a nearby rehab facility to start his physical rehab. But within a matter of days, he began feeling nauseous and running a fever. A lumbar puncture revealed bacteria, Enterobacter aerogenes, to be found in his cerebrospinal fluid. Within just a few hours of being diagnosed, the infection actually caused so much pressure to be put on his brain that it pushed part of it into his spinal column, damaging his spinal cord and ending his ability to breathe on his own ever again. In a matter of a couple of hours, this infection had dismantled Josh, overwhelming his body and causing him to become a permanent ventilator-dependent quadriplegic. Josh died 2 weeks later, but not from the original reason that he had been admitted to the hospital. He died unnecessarily from healthcare-acquired bacteria. HAIs, a dangerous, invisible enemy that each year continues to kick American patients when we're down, killing more than 99,000 of us in exactly the place and within the very setting that we trust so much for ultimate safety, the hospital environment. You know what? I could rattle out all the statistics for you here today, and I could show you the colorful charts, and I could show you the spiking graphs and the impressive visuals, but I won't. I could spend time reading from medical journals and quoting from recent articles and focusing on hand hygiene compliance surveys and showing you the way, but I won't. Instead, I'll stick with what my husband and I have been told by those who know. And what that is, it's that if healthcare providers and visitors alike would simply wash or sanitize their hands prior to touching hospitalized patients or objects in the room, they might effectively reduce bacterial infections in healthcare settings by as much as 40%. And you know what? Forget 40% because that's just the number. 40% in this particular scenario means 40,000 people. People like our son. People you love as much as we loved our son. Or mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and husbands and wives. You know, one simple, unsexy, untechy action like hand washing, you can't imagine, but it really can effectively save 40,000 people, lives like Josh's every single year. When Josh was dying, more than 70 of his friends waited for 2 days in the hospital lobby for the last chance to say goodbye to their dear friend forever. And every one of them had their own favorite memory of him, fun, silly, poignant stories of some hilarious antic or remarkable, wonderful moment or adventure that they had shared together. It was a single common thread that underscored their unique relationships with him, and they shared those times with us.